Good afternoon.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
All right, looks like we have critical mass to get started. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Another Finance and Operations Committee meeting of July 15th. We'll jump right into the agenda. The first items on the agenda, are there any questions or comments related to the two information-only items? Hearing and seeing none, jump into the abstracts, and there are two Head Start related abstracts. And so let's look at abstracts 3.1 and 3.2. And if you could just, when describing them, differentiate between the two abstracts. And I'm assuming this is Ms. Derwin and maybe some others jumping in. So
Correct. Okay, we'll start with 3.1. This is the Head Start Federal Basic Grant. We received an award of $5,837,376. This is broken down into $5,781,000 for program operations and $56,225 for training and technical assistance. This grant covers the period from July 1st of 2024 to June 30th of 2025. This is year one of a 5-year grant cycle. It provides for high quality early childhood education and preschool classes for low income families. It is funding the enrollment of 438 students. Students have to meet the eligibility criteria of residency, age, and income.
all right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to that? So the questions that I have is, so this is the last we knew, we were in a non-disclosure period. While everything was worked out with the Head Start home office or the regional office in terms of what this will look like. So this is all that's done. And so now we have a good sense of what's going to be happening in the district for the next several years. Is that correct?
Correct. We received the official award in at the end of last month, and there's a 7-day congressional hold. And you know, until this is approved by this board, it was still part of the confidentiality agreements that we have signed, but this is the final award for the grant. Correct.
Thank you. I think what I know that the board has seen, because Head Start office required that we approve the grant application last December. My request is that there is a memo prepared for the board to be posted Friday's meeting for the posted on Friday for the Monday meeting for the full board. I'm sure there's going to be questions as to what's going to be new or different versus what is Head Start last year, implications of the funding amounts, timelines, etc. So if we could just have like a basic memo that just kind of outlines some of the highlights of the big changes, particularly any changes that affects parents, families, or staff, you know, that would be, I think, helpful. Any other committee members? Is there anything else you'd like to see in that memo, or is that kind of broad enough to cover it? Broad enough? Okay. So if we could have that, I would appreciate that. That would,
Yep, no problem.
that would be helpful for the rest of the board to hear about. And then also for 3.2.
Okay, 3.2 is anticipated funding. I wanted to submit this abstract, just because of the timelines over the summer. And this came as a possibility outside of, the negotiation period. They allow for one-time setup fees to kick off the new grant. So one of the areas that there was a reduction in funding was for training. And we were trying to continue on with the literacy training that we had planned that was supporting the district training. So in this grant, we also have a provision for paraprofessionals to attend training outside of their contractual hours and to be compensated for that training. Because we do have lead teachers that are part of that. So that is part of it. It also allows for some seasonal help, which we've always had in the past. That may be a possibility or may not, depending upon when we get this award. And it also allows for some personnel for follow through on meeting the medical Head Start performance standards. So as I said, this is anticipated. I wanted to make sure that this was in and processed if and when we receive it, so we could move the money forward and have access to the money before the summer was over.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? The only thing I would say is, I see your hand, Ms. Hannons, one moment. I would say that we need to have some indicator that this is pending receipt of the funds in the description, or yeah, pending award of the funds. Just something that says that this is conditional until we get that final word. I understand the desire to move it through so that the funds are available as soon as possible, since summer is in process. But we do need something that says that until it's official, this isn't official. Ms. Hannons?
Yes, that was one of my questions as well. And then the second question was if these funds do not arrive in time, or that doesn't get approved, what happens to the planning and the summer work? Because the summer, we're into the summer now, so I just wanted to.
I totally understand what you're saying. You know, we won't be able to have the personnel that will do that if that's the case. We did not anticipate, you know, the grant coming in as late as it did. This one-time funding was their suggestion, so I was just trying to take advantage of it. I have reached out several times just to see if there was a timeline. I haven't heard anything back, so that's why I wanted to put it in with, you know, in anticipation if we do get it. But if we don't receive it, then, you know, it will be unfortunate.
So the work is not started yet?
No. Wish it was. And the work for the paraprofessionals would be ongoing throughout the year. So actually the amount that we put in was for 3 hours for over the 10 months. So 30 hours per person, which wasn't a lot, but I wanted them to have the benefit of attending the professional development.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so just to recap for these two items, one is we'll have a memo prepared for 3.1, which is basically just what are the major changes and timelines and things like that for, basically what's going to be different about Head Start in New Haven Public Schools this fall versus last fall, based on the new grant award, and then a change to the description for 3.2, saying that this is pending final word or receipt of the funds. I don't know the proper way to say it for an abstract, but similar to how we do it for when we're approving agreements, saying that it's conditional of the money coming through from whatever the funding agency is.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Any other comments or questions related to these? All right, hearing none, we will move on into the purchase orders. So 4.1, and this is listed as Mr. Middleton.
Good evening. This purchase order is for Schoolmint. This is the lottery software product that the Board of Alders and the Board of Education agreed to a 3-year agreement prior to. So this is just year 3, asking to be approved.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions connected to this? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you. Just a general question. Is the software service performing well for us?
It's working just fine.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
And my only question was, this was a true multi-year agreement, right? And this is the last year. And so my questions are just to confirm that this is the last year of this, and you're going to have to rethink this or go out to bid or RFP, or what's the plan?
I don't want to misspeak. So at this point, I don't think there is a plan. We're going to get through the next year, and then I'll be looking to the administration for guidance on how to handle next steps.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, I do want to request that we go out to bid, even if we end up selecting the same vendor. I think we need to keep them competitive on these types of services. And if that is a process the district will follow, I don't think we can wait until the end of the year to do that. Because it sounds like we're going to need something in place for the lottery work towards the end of the year.
I'm totally comfortable with that. I'm doing whatever the board and the administration would like for myself or the team to do. I will just say as a caveat, by changing vendors, it is what the parents directly see. So 3 years ago, we went from Smart Choice to Schoolmint because the product ended shelf life. So if parents are used to this portal now, so just want us to be mindful of changing potentially to a new system on the impact it would have on parents.
I'll just add that, there's a range of options in terms of, going out to bid, or also for RF request for qualifications. I mean, you'll have to do something. So, but the request for qualifications allows for looking at a variety of things, including price, but also parent and student experience, et cetera. But yes, agree, something will have to be done, and probably around the first of the calendar year. Just thinking about timelines with purchasing, et cetera, you might want to file that away. Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, and Mr. Middleton, to your point, it might be worth using our survey tool to see what the parent experience is with this resource. And that's information we can give back to the vendor, especially when they try to increase the prices on us. I think we need to know what are the positive things our families are experiencing, what are the challenges, and we can see if this vendor can make good on those, if there's a new vendor that does all the things well that we need done well, and also improves upon the things that are weaknesses. So I actually don't know what how many users or surveys can go out, but I know we purchased something. And if we can get maximum use out of it in a way that doesn't irritate our parents and those who need to reply, it might be worth getting that information.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to 4.2, which is a purchase order under state contract with Frontier Communications. Mr. Simeon?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, this Frontier contract is for all the PRI physical lines that go into our schools. Those are copper lines that have all the direct line phone numbers, fax machines, security cameras, elevator phones. And any schools that have a security system connected to. So this is a state contract, heavily discounted. We are in the process of looking at moving to a digital fax system, which will eliminate some of those copper lines going into the schools, which will reduce this somewhat in the future.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, just thank you for looking into the digital fax option and seeing if that can improve service and reduce the expense of the copper lines. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, we are also looking at, we looked just initially at some digital options for some of our security cameras and other items that we have in our school systems, but that equipment is so old that it's all analog, so we would still need to keep those lines. But as we continue to move forward with our technology plans, we are looking at wherever we can reduce expense, moving to digital, we will do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to 4.3, purchase order under state contract with Selco Partnership. Mr. Simeon?
Selco, let me pull that one up here.
Oh, it's listed as Selco Partnership
Oh,
doing business
Verizon.
as
Yeah,
Verizon
that's our,
Wireless.
yeah, those are all our cell phones for the Board of Education. That's the annual cost of the wireless bill contract for all the cell phones for the Board of Education.
And I'll just throw in, by that you mean the employees of the district and the Board of
Correct.
Education, not that
Correct.
there's $45,000 worth of cell phones for just the board.
No, those are
We
that,
received none of that, so.
right.
Any comments or questions related to this? I had none either. We'll move on to 4.4, purchase order under state contract with Total Communication.
I have a question for that one.
Yeah, Dr. Yarbrough, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I was slow getting my hand up. Now, the fact that it's a state contract means it was negotiated with the state, kind of the lowest or a very low rate to us, because I also know Verizon to be high or expensive of other providers. But because it's a state contract, does that automatically mean that it's a considerably lower rate compared to if we didn't go through a state contract with them?
Yes, what the state does, and this is with a lot of their contracts, we're able to jump on, the state is able to bring in not only other municipalities, but again, school systems onto their state contract, which provides them extreme discounts for, that the normal public wouldn't receive. So we're able to purchase those services at an extreme discount off of retail from the state.
Great, thank you.
in my understanding is using this as an example, that process would have involved looking at offers from other companies other than Verizon in order to, it's a competitive process or.
Right, if we didn't have that, we would go out with an RFP to like, well, AT&T, MCI, and a few other large cell phone companies to provide us service.
All right, now we'll move on to 4.4, which is purchase order under state contract with Total Communications. Mr. Simeon.
Yes, let's see, that's that umbrella cloud security subscription is for our network. And what that does is it protects our it's a piece of software that protects our systems from being spoofed, which means being copied or replicated by other bad actors out there and representing themselves as the Board of Education. This was a contract that we had last year with them also. And it doesn't allow any, you see in there, the DNS servers, which is which are the servers that house our addresses for all our internet-facing applications for the Board of Education. And that's also through a state contract.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? My only comment is just moving forward, I would just request for some of these to describe a little bit more fully what the thing is, if it's not something that's kind of common knowledge. So unlike, you know, cell phone service and landline service, et cetera, total umbrella software
Sure.
thing, you know, that's something that just a sentence or two of explanation of
Right.
what that might be for the general lay public. I mean, I was able to find it, Google it, and it's there, but just something to kind of
Understood.
fill people in. So hearing nothing else on that, we'll move on to 4.5, which is purchase order under a contract with Savas Learning Company. Ms. Joyner.
Good evening, everyone. This is for the digital courseware resources for our Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 classes. So all of our students and teachers who are enrolled in those classes, this is what they use as part of their curricular resources. And I know you had a question as to whether this was discussed in TNL. And what happened was this particular resource for high school was selected prior to me coming into this position. The one that I actually had input in selecting was our middle school resource that we're using, and that how we operated with that in TNL is we piloted it. We had we got feedback from teachers, from students, from administration about those particular things. We put together a presentation, presented it through TNL, and that's how we made our decision. We offered, this is what we are selecting. So that's where the conversation happens. Once the curricular resource is actually adopted by the Board of Education, then the rest of it becomes just providing the supporting materials for the students and teachers to be able to use it.
All right, thank you for that. Are there comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you. So Ms. Joyner, based on what you said, is this a piece of software that's, or is this a tool for math that is on its way out for the district and will be replaced
It's
by
new.
what you use for the middle school? Oh, this one's new. Okay.
This is new. So this is new for high school. So when I moved into the position, there was an elementary school resource and a high school resource. There wasn't anything for the middle school. So that's why I said I was able to actually select from the middle school. So what we did was we piloted what was used at the elementary level and what was used at the high school level because they both offered middle school resources. And we found that the one that was used at the elementary through middle school was the one that was most effective and most requested by the staff and students that were using it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right, yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'll just, my question for this one, and it was also for the next one, was I had a comment from another board member that was asking about some things, and it's not referring to these specifically, but things that were teaching and learning related. Was it discussed into teaching and learning? So my recommendation for those of you that are involved in teaching and learning is maybe having a conversation there to clarify when something should go before the teaching and learning committee and when something doesn't need to. Just my personal opinion, you know, the major things like buying curriculum, new software platforms, et cetera, that seems like it'd be perfectly appropriate to be discussed there and the process of how it's being piloted and selected. And then, but some things I don't think would need to go through there because they're ancillary or continuations of using existing software. But I'm assuming that when things come through finance and operations, that we're ready to go. And if there's an issue, the board members will have an opportunity to raise issues either by looking at the F&O agendas and bringing questions to us, which the committee will bring forward in this meeting, or when materials are posted for the regular board meeting. So that's nothing particular for this one item, but just in general, when are they discussed in teaching and learning, if at all? So, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, for these licenses, I think I see like 1,800 for the different components. Do we just pay for the license for the users that we activate, or is this the bill and we pay it all independent of uptake or use?
It is, they're all activated because it's the number of students that we would have, students that are using it. So they're assigned to teachers and students, and we have probably more than that across the district, but we actually reduced the number this year from the previous year because we found that there was a small number that wasn't being used. So we just took those off because they may have been, for example, if we look at the number of students, say in 9th or 10th grade, but then if we find out late, we initially did it based on the number of students, finding out later that maybe some of those students were life skills students, so they weren't going to be taking these classes. So then we didn't need those particular licenses.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we will next talk about 4.6, which is a purchase order with Rocket Lit. Mr. McCain.
So I'll be standing in for Mr. McCain. Good evening, everyone. Rocket Lit is our online assessment tool that we're using for grades 3 through 11 to assess science skills aligned to the national science standards, next generation science standards. It's important. Right now, we don't have an online assessment that gives us a predictor of student performance on our state assessment. This tool was presented to TNL November of 23.
Thank you. Comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you. I'm toggling between screens here. Thank you for presenting this. So 2 questions, maybe more than 2. What have we been doing as a district in terms of assessment without this tool?
It's been really inconsistent across schools. And in some schools, honestly, non-existent at this point outside of our regular state assessment. And as we move towards a culture that is very data wise and make data-driven decisions, this is aligned with that practice, which aligns to our strategic operating plan.
Thank you. And I think I've read that in the documentation that this vendor provided science kits that we used. Did they provide an assessment with that science kit? And also, is the goal of their kits to get districts to buy this tool? So I'm trying to see the connection between the science kits that we used from them and this assessment tool.
So I am not sure that this is the company that we receive our science kits from. I would have to look that part up. What I can tell you is I know that initially Supervisor McCain was exposed to this group at a conference. And then he, as well as some other teachers, reviewed the platform. We piloted it in a few places, and our teachers were excited about it. It gives teachers the opportunity to look at a bank of questions to give to students, but also the teachers can create their own assessment questions. And they've been working in study teams, if you will, putting together common assessments, which is new for our science department.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing else on that. We'll move on into the agreements, the first one of which is with Lumen Touch LLC. Ms. Peters?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This agreement is with a partner that a vendor we've worked with for several years because they customize the program just for our school-based health centers and the data needs that we're asking, which is kind of unheard of if you're looking at the bigger companies like Epic. For the price that we're paying, they've been really great partners in that way. So for our agreement this year is actually a little less than it was last year, $31,775 for the year. And what it really does, as we expand all we've expanded pretty rapidly the different school-based health centers with our 4 major partners. And what this is designed to do is to have everyone, no matter what school and site that school-based health center or what partner is hiring our staff, everyone is required to enter the same data, like visit data, student visit data, what kinds of services our students are using in the school-based health centers, which helps us to look across all sites to compare, make sure we understand what services are most frequently used, what services or trends that we're seeing we might need more of to allocate resources across all sites. And finally, really, it just also helps to make sure, from my point of view, in evaluating at the end of the year, that all sites and all partners are meeting the conditions of the agreements that they signed off on, such as, meeting benchmarks for enrollment, for example, and making sure that the number of services that are in there, consultations that they're required to do, sitting on committees, school committees and my committees. And of course, the reporting data is the most important. From our funders, we want to make sure that they are able with that data to complete the required reporting from our funders. So that's what Lumen Touch is. It's a data management system that's highly customized just for our district, which is why they are considered by the city a sole source provider.
All right, thank you, Ms. Peters. Are there comments or questions? Yes, Dr. Yarborough.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. For this data management system, is it only for data related to the health services provided? And my question stems from wondering whether this also includes or could include food allergy data, and does it interface with our nurses? I'm just trying to see if there's a way that it captures maybe more things for the district if needed.
That's a really good question. It's a HIPAA compliant, self-contained software system, and it is not even though reason we chose it is that we link it to Power Schools, or the IT has made it so that there's a data dump every night into Lumen Touch. What that really means is that for each school, Power Schools does a data dump so that when we get new students, for example, or it only lists the students in that school that any school-based health center can access. So they can't access a different school of students. So it's very customized to each school for that. And Power Schools is linked to it because we need to know who's in the school, and it has their ID number and everything else. In terms of HIPAA compliancy, Power Schools is definitely not say health HIPAA compliant. Let's just put it that way, in the sense that we cannot, we've looked at this, trust me, several years ago, and to interchange, it would take a lot of probably some minds from both our district and Lumen Touch to be able to somehow exchange data. But what I can tell you is that the nurses and the school-based health centers already exchange a lot of that data. The nurses with food allergies, all of that is school nurses, not school-based health center data that's collected, because we don't see every student. We only see students who we have permission forms for. And the school nurses collect all of that data that should be shared then with teachers and so forth, and have a plan for food allergies and different things like that. So actually what you're talking about should be captured. No, then they do share it and report it to the state, different types of health information that they collect, that they collect already and are mandated to do, such as vision screening, hearing screening, all of that. They do, that's collected by school, the health department, basically. So right now, no, we're not linked to Power School to exchange or enter information, and we'd have to get, more legal minds involved if we were ever going to do something like that. But my understanding from director of IT from years ago when we started this, that they said it was not at all, meant to be a health record or health compliant, a HIPAA compliant health, depository, really. It would just, ours is meant or designed as almost as compliant as an EHR. It actually was an EHR. We only use the data management part. We don't put notes in there for health records. That's done with each partner. So Yale New Haven, Cornell Scott, they enter their notes, the health information data, that is in their records, not in Lumen Touch. Lumen Touch is only a data management, so we can capture what they were seeing, how many immunizations, etc. But it's not, we couldn't go in and see their notes. There's a difference. I don't know if that's too confusing, but
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing else, we'll move on to agreements 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5 are all related. Infant and toddler slots. So we'll move on to Ms. Diaz-Valencia.
Hi, good evening, everyone. These are the agreements to accompany the abstract from the last meeting that was approved for the child daycare private providers from Friends Center, Montessori School on Edgewood, Morning Glory, and LULAC Head Start. This is for both their full-time spaces and their infant toddler expansion spaces as well. These numbers and seats are allocated by the state of Connecticut, and we are simply the fiscal pass-through.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions on any of these 4 items? I'll just say thank you. When we were doing our review, it's just the way it works for everybody. If we get questions ahead of time, we ask them, and then sometimes staff have a chance to update the paperwork and repost materials, which is what happened in the case with these, of adding some details to the cover memo. So just thank you for that, but also just use this as an example that when we get questions, we try to get the information to the people with the answers, and then in some cases they're able to update the materials so that by the meeting time, everything is ready to go. So many eyes makes this work. So thank you very much. Hearing nothing else on these, we'll move on to 5.6, which is an agreement with Relay Hub. Ms. Jackson.
Yep, this is an agreement for Relay Hub. They provide two services for us. They actually provide some of the administrative oversight for Medicaid reimbursement. And then they also do the billing. I know there's been some questions related to Medicaid reimbursement, but I just wanted to maybe just share a little bit of information. One of the things, again, to be eligible, that a child has to have an IEP and also have to be Medicaid eligible. The other piece, and I think it is true that there's money that sometimes is left on the table, is that we have to get parent consent. So parents have to consent for us to be able to bill their insurance. So a part of what Relay's job is really to kind of organize the information so that it's targeted for us to be able to, one, look at some of the administrative oversight in order for us to get reimbursement, but also two, to organize it in a way so that we understand which parents, which students, who do we have to work with in order to be able to obtain consent. And if there are service providers that also need to do their due diligence. So they help us with the oversight and monitoring, as well as the billing for Medicaid reimbursement.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? I'll just say thank you for that. The questions about are we maximizing Medicaid reimbursement came from questions from a member of school staff who was wondering about that and had seen some recent articles about on NPR or some other news sites about Medicaid expansion and what they can cover and how much schools can seek to get, et cetera. So I imagine it's the developing topic. All right. So thank you. Hearing nothing else, we'll move on to the amendments. Amendment 6.1 is an amendment to the agreement with ACES for assistive technology. Ms. Jackson.
So this is amendment for assistive technology. Again, assistive technology, for the most part, the service that's been provided has been really what we look for evaluations. Primarily, ACES has been doing that for the population of students mandated by their IEP for what we call AAC devices, which is augmentative and alternative learning devices. Again, for children who may have language impairments, it provides things like pictures. We use things like Go Talk. We also have a range of students there's a range within assistive technology, but for this particular provider, as we see with the evaluations, the outcomes have been, again, on what I'm talking about by way of the augmentative and alternative learning or communication devices. Again, we're asking for this at this point in time, this vendor. I've gone back even as far as 2021, 2022, and just reviewing some of the billing for this particular vendor, looking at what were the average monthly expenditures. What we have found is that for the expenditures, we have not gone over this particular contract. This year, it has gone over. What we found is that in the fall, the average of expenditures have been around $5,000, $6,000 a month. What we found is that in the latter part of the year, after April, we have had significant increases in the billing, even so much so a bill of $27,000. What we found is that this is a service that we have asked ACES to render. The issue that we find is that we have not any parameters around when they have to do their work completion. So as it's been explained to us, is that they had more availability of practitioner to do a certain amount of work over a certain period of time that was all bundled right at the end of the school year. So moving forward, really looking at this particular vendor and how we set parameters around their work completion. Because again, there's work that was all bundled at one period of time. There's not a specific time frame by which work has been completed, yielding a large uptick towards the end of the school year.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you for the walkthrough and explanation. Just thinking as you were talking, I wonder if, I mean, they probably won't want to agree to this, but in the future contracts, that there can be a certain percentage of billing, like billing towards the end can't be over a certain percentage,
Uh-huh.
so that they can start early, or if they do choose to wait, they're not dropping a bill on us that we then have to pay, and have been unaware of.
Yes, and we said that what we need to do on our end, and I take responsibility for doing this piece, is making sure that we have work completion parameters. Right now, we don't have them. If I gave a referral, for example, if I gave you a referral in August, it's not that you have to complete it by September, if you will. There's not that level of parameter. So we are at the mercy of when you have availability as a service provider. And I think that's the piece that we can control more, is to be able to set those work completion parameters around service delivery. Because there's not a mandated time frame.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll say thanks for the updated memo. I know this is something that's been on agendas before, and I know you and your team have been doing a lot of work on this, and the costs have come down as a result of that work. So I appreciate the updated memo and the explanation now. So just to clarify, I think I just heard you say it. This is work that we've asked them to do, and it's work that we have to do as part of, it's evaluations that need to happen based on IEPs for these students
Recommendations.
evaluated of if they should have assistive technologies. And so this is their vendor that does that specialized work to see if that needs to happen.
Yes.
They had a huge amount of availability in the last month of the year, did a lot of work for us, but it snuck up on us. Based on what you're saying and what's also in the memo, things are in place so this doesn't happen again, so there's no surprises.
There's no surprises. And like I said, again, on our end, taking responsibility of how, this has been a vendor where we've actually reduced the contract amount over a period of time. And really just making sure that we're setting parameters and not just basing it off of vendor availability, but we're setting the parameters in which if we make a referral, we expect for it to be done by X amount of time. That will help us to track it.
Okay. But that answers the big, I mean, it's a concern that others have expressed over time, is that, we don't want to be in situations where vendors can just decide, I'm going to do some work.
Yeah.
I'll just decide to do it and then I'll bill the schools for it and they'll have to pay me. But it originated with us on the school side.
And it was really good too. It was a really good look, to be honest with you, because we actually found some other ways of looking at some long-term savings. So more to come on that, but we looked at this
Okay.
thoroughly.
All right. My only other question is in the memo. It is stated that on the first page that, let me find it here. After the submission of the amendment, the vendor recognized the error, noted that they'll provide the school system with a credit for the 24-25 school year. And then please note there was no final approval for the credit at the time of the phone call. So, so basically in order to have information ready to post. So my question is this credit agreement happened? Will it happen this week?
I doubt it, Mr. Wilcox, because the person that I received the confirmation of what they're going to do is not the ultimate decision maker. So I was not as confident about that once, reaching out to the decision maker, the ultimate decision maker. This was somewhat, I guess, middle management, the person who has oversight of this particular service. They made that. They made the call that that's what they were going to get. But until I get something in writing, I just felt like we have to move forward.
Okay. So I have two thoughts on this. One is, I think this memo needs to be accurate and complete by the time it's posted for the meeting materials on Friday for Monday's board meeting. So if this is not going to happen, then I think this should be
This
removed
update.
from
Okay.
the memo.
Okay.
But if this is something that they're saying, I'm thinking a credit would be good, an acknowledgement that they have created an issue here just in the way this played out. And so I'm wondering if they're saying it. I can understand having somebody saying some things that higher ups will not agree to. But if they would agree to it, then why would we approve this without having that in place? And maybe they would agree to it to get the final payment. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, which is dangerous in a public meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm just worried about, us having to close out our fiscal year, quite honestly. So I will update the memo and then continue to forge forward with, seeking a credit for the 24-25 school year. But I think at this point in time, and that's the concern, is about how we close out our fiscal year. So.
And I know that's a big concern. I imagine Ms. Hannons is nodding like, yes, we need to close out our fiscal year now. So I do think that this memo has to be accurate, so that I wouldn't want
Sure.
somebody voting on this thinking this might happen.
Sure,
So
I will update that. Thank you for that.
Any other comments or questions related to this? Okay, so it's unfortunate, but it's for needed services. There's a memo that explains things. So I'm personally set on this one. So see where my agenda is. All right, now we have a series of contract awards. So we'll buzz through these. These are a lot of food related ones. So we'll just jump into 7.1, which is renewal of option 2 of 3 with Bordova Innovations. Mr. Young, or is somebody else presenting these? I don't see him. See if he's in the.
I don't have them in the waiting area.
Okay. So I think what we'll do is we'll walk through these. If committee members have problems or issues, we'll just not send them on until we get the full information. That's the danger of not having somebody here, is if there's questions and we can't get answers, then we just won't move things forward. Fortunately, a lot of these are relatively straightforward because they're renewals or awards based on a bid process. So, Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes. Yeah, I guess my questions would have been, so in years past, two things I guess would make this easy. The paperwork's a little bit confusing in terms of sometimes it's a new award, but the same vendor. And it's hard for me to judge whether there's been an increase in prices and how much. But in years past, I know the food service department has brought in money at the end of the fiscal year. And so it makes a strong case for them being able to make their purchases to provide what they need and that they do the process in an efficient way. And I think my only general question around this is like how much might this be an increase over a previous year? And does it still leave the food service department in a good financial position? That's just, after reading through these, that's my only kind of overarching question.
Okay. So just looking at these, only 7.1 and 7.2 are renewals, exercising options for additional years, and the rest are award of contracts. Which, just using one as an example, I mean, it goes through the bid, an RFP process, and they outline number of respondents and etc. And they use the city's purchasing process for these award of contracts. in particular, because this was also Mr. Gormany, when he was with the city, was also a person who was heavily involved in the food service budget. And as you might recall, he along with Mr. Young, or the previous food service director. So I guess we
Yes.
have two options. One is we could talk about these, and if we have major questions, we could choose not to move them forward. We could not move any of them forward. My concern with that is these are July 1 starts. And in particular, there is a 5th Monday in July. So there's 3 weeks between the next board meeting, which would mean these would not be approved until August. I'm trying to remember, 10th. Trying to remember what the first, the
12th.
2nd of August is. So,
August 12th.
Dr. Negron.
So clearly, I believe Mr. Young is still on vacation. I think his assistant was supposed to be here with us today. I don't know what happened. That's what I'm trying to find out. But I think if you can send the questions our way, we'll make sure that we get those tomorrow from the assistant to be able to forward those your way.
Thank you.
So I think the most efficient way to do this is, Dr. Yarbrough, is if we just go one by one, and then if we have questions, we'll note them. And then those questions can get to Mr. Young, and he can provide, or the Mr. Young's assistant, and then we can provide answers. And if they're not sufficient, then items can always be withdrawn from the full board agenda.
Okay, we can do that.
Don't have sufficient information.
Yeah, and as I looked through it, I had no individual question. I had no questions for the individual ones. Just a general question in terms of collectively, are we on budget for what we expect for the school year? Because I do recognize in part the process that was used to select these vendors. But I'm happy to go through them one by one.
Okay, well, let's do that as a way forward, and then we can even move them conditionally, like if we have questions for these, we can move them separately, like it's pending
Okay.
receiving more information, or more information being posted regarding them. So,
Okay, thank you.
I mean, they're relatively, like you said, on individual level, they're relatively straightforward. And then plus, we're just advisory to the full board anyways. If there are other questions that come, as part of this being posted on Friday, we could multiple opportunities if there's individual questions for these. So let's just do the first one here is 7.1, which is renewal option 2 of 3 with Bordova Innovations. This is food service uniforms. This is a renewal option 2 of 3. Which means that it's under the same terms and conditions in the bid solicitation, which happened for fiscal year 23-24. Any comments or questions on this one? I had none for this. The 7.2 is a renewal option for the contract with Gilman Cheese. So again, this is a renewal option, which would mean that it's under the same terms and conditions that was in the bid solicitation, which was done in 22-23 fiscal year. Comments? Yeah, Dr. Yarbrough.
I remember at one budget meeting, there was an increase in the either consumption of cheese or cost of cheese, and I recognize this is a renewal. So one note to Mr. Young just might be around that. Like, do we need a heads up that there's going to be something that'll come later regarding this? But other than that, I respect this renewal.
Thank you. Yeah, I do recall there was a whole lot of cheese consumption at one point or something. 7.3 is an award of contract with Precision Food Service for on-call refrigeration repairs. This was done as an RFP with multiple respondents. So this is an award for this vendor. Any comments or questions on this one? All right, and then we'll go to 7.4, which is award a contract also with Precision Food Service for on-call oven and steam equipment. So this was also an RFP. There were multiple respondents. And this was the vendor selected. Comments or questions on this one? I had none. 7.5 is an award, a contract with Air Care Environmental Services for on-call hood services. This was also a request for proposal. There was only one respondent for this, and so they won the bid or the RFP process. Comments or questions on this one? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, just as we go through these, if we can get the information back to Mr. Young and the others. I appreciate the memo and the layout and how they provide the previous payment history and how the award amount not to exceed is above what is forecasted for 2024. I just think it's good budgeting that is represented. So I appreciate the data they have and then also how they're choosing the not to exceed amount. So that's all.
All right, so not a question, but a couple comments that
Yeah.
I agree would be good to get back to Mr. Young and his team. 7.6 is an award of contract with Encore Fire Protection. So this is also the result of a request for proposal. It had multiple respondents. And this was the awardee. Comments or questions on this one? I had none either. 7.7 is an award, a contract with Made Right Specialty Foods, which was an RFP with 14 respondents on this one. Any comments or questions on this one? I'll just say as a general comment that I always find it interesting, just the amount of, like, this one here in particular is for beef steak sandwiches, portions, and it's just interesting to see how institutional food, the costs and how it's proportioned out into all the little sizes. Something since I've been on the board, seeing this is always just kind of interesting to see we're going through 56,000 quantities of 2-ounce portion of meatballs. So it's just, that's not an important comment, but anyways, 7.8 is award a contract with JTM Provisions for direct commodity items. This is also an RFP, 14 respondents. This is the award. Comments or questions on 7.8? I had none either. Award a contract. 7.9 is award a contract with Nardoni Brothers Baking. This also was an RFP with also 14 respondents. This was the awardee. Any comments or questions on this? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, just that it looks like, I mean, the fiscal amount, what's reported here is that the fiscal amount for 2024 was 62,000, but this award is not to exceed 50,000. So I'll be curious how that not to exceed amount was chosen. And I guess, yeah, how it was chosen and if we think we're going to go above that or no. And for previous years, it's been 41,000, 40,000. So we may be right in line. And last year might have been an anomaly.
Okay, so is somebody capturing that question? Ms. DeMayo? Okay, thank you. So, all right, so I agree. And that was 7.9. And if we could have an answer to that question, like by Thursday. And it also wouldn't hurt if it was just put into the memo as an update. But All right, so that was 7.9. 7.10 is out of the shell award a contract. This was also an RFP, also had many respondents. Comments or questions on this? Yeah, this is barbecue and teriyaki chicken. Okay, so award a contract with Tyson Prepared Foods. Also an RFP, also many respondents. Comments or questions on this? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, just a similar financial comment as the two before. Last year it says 188,000, or the fiscal year 24, $188,000 paid to the vendor. The years before that, it was half of that, much lower. And our award amount not to exceed for this contract proposal is 125,000. So just want to make sure they look at that, and that's what we want and need.
All right, so it sounds like the same question as the previous one.
Yes.
All right, sounds good. 7.12 is an award of contract with International Foods. This was also an RFP, also multiple respondents. Comments or questions on this one? I had none either. 7.13 is an award of contract with Hormel Food Sales. This was also an RFP, also many respondents. Comments or questions on this one? I had none either. And this is the big one. So an award of contract with Thurston Foods is 7.14. This also was an RFP. There was multiple respondents. Are there comments or questions related to this? And this is a big one, just in terms of dollar amount and the amount of food that's going to be ordered through all these different things. Okay, moving on to 7.15. This was an award of contract with Nardone or Nardoni Brothers. This also was an RFP and multiple respondents. Are there comments or questions related to this one? Okay, 7.16 is with, I think it's Guida's Dairy. And this is also an RFP. This was only one respondent. Are there comments or questions related to this one? Okay. This was 7.17 is a contract with Loopy Bakery. This is the result of an RFP. There were multiple respondents. Are there comments or questions related to this one? I had none either. 7.18 contract with J&G Baked Goods. This was an RFP, multiple respondents. Comments or questions related to this? I just want to say thanks to staff, because this was one where the wrong document was posted, and so we sent the question in and the right one was posted before the meeting, so appreciate that happening. 7.19 is a contract with Carbonella and DeSarbo for produce. This is an RFP. There was only one respondent to this one. A whole bunch of fruits and vegetables on this. Comments or questions related to this one? I had none either. An award of contract with Trio Community Meals. This is also a big one. This was an RFP. There was only one respondent. Comments or questions on this one? I assume it's going to be a similar one to the previous few, which was how was the award amount derived, since it exceeds what we had been in previous years. So same question as those other couple. 7.21 is a award of contract with Nuovo Packaging, paper supplies. This was an RFP, multiple respondents. Comments or questions? And finally, an award of contract with Imperial Dade for the purchases of paper goods and chemical supplies. This was an RFP with multiple respondents. Comments or questions related to this one? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yeah, no, I'll take it back because in 2023 fiscal year, we paid 850,000. So this award amount is in that ballpark. I was going to ask why so much more than last fiscal year, but it's not. It's still in range.
Okay, so do not ask the question on this one.
Right, no question for this one. Sorry about that. Thank you.
All right. So those are the food service ones. And so there was several, or at least a few, where we had the question on how the amount was derived. If there's any other questions that come up, if we have them in the next day or so, we'll get answers for those. So that's the end of the action items. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and that is I move we send to the board with a recommendation to approve the 2 abstracts, 6 purchase orders, 6 agreements, 1 amendment, and 22 contracts.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll just say that included the request for more information on those few of those contracts. So go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
President Rivera?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Let's move on into the next section of the meeting, and there is a monthly financial report. Ms. Hannes?
Good evening. Okay, the finance report that we're presenting today is just for the month of June, showing just our expenditures. I didn't want to, I still wanted to keep the way we've been doing the monthly report and being transparent. So with that, we're just showing actually the expenditures. We still have a lot of open payables to process and go through. We have a lot of invoices and stuff that are still being processed. Of course, and we're calling vendors and making sure that they provide our last invoices. Christine, are you moving the slide? Okay. So for right now, we're at a summary of expenses. We're at $292.3 million of our annual budgets. So for the general fund, we've spent 90%, basically 90% of the adopted budget. And for special funds, we're at 76% of the current budget for expenditures. Keep going. Yeah, keep going. Okay. So I've made I've made an adjustment that where the heading, it should say general funds report. So you'll see that corrected before it goes to the board. Right now, we're still trending at $3.8 million. And as I said, we have a lot of reimbursements to include, and we also have a lot of final invoices from contractors. We noticed that the biggest amount of the open encumbrances were for contracts for services of June. So provided that it's only the 15th, we should be getting final invoices in for all of our subcontractors. And this is just basically the summary page that shows you where our expenditures are, where we're trending. Again, this is just for the month of June. This is just preliminary to keep the board advised of where we are, but we still have a lot of work to do. And then the basic changes were the same as last month. There were no basic, no changes for this fiscal year. I mean, for this particular month in terms of numbers changing or going up. Actually, they're starting to go down. Mitigation strategies, I just kind of highlighted what we did this year to try to, reduce the cost of the general funds. These are some of the things that we did, and we'll continue on into the next fiscal year without, of course, the ESSER funding. So there'll be a lot of different ideas going on, or areas where we think we can cut dollars. You can keep going. We're still waiting for unemployment costs, which they do at the end of the end of the year. Retirement payout costs, people are still retiring, so that may be one thing that makes our numbers changes. Increases due to pending union contracts. We still have, I think it's 2 contracts that are still outstanding. One is the substitutes and one is the paras. And then if there are any additional litigation costs that we're not aware of, those will go through. We took a hit this year in our reduction for our indirect cost rate, and the indirect cost rate will not be looking good for next fiscal year. I just got notification that it's going down to almost 1%. And that's due to a lot of the grants that we've gotten in that, you don't report those grants when you're doing your indirect cost rate calculation. So there'll be a big decrease in that as well. Keep going. Special funds reports are basically shows you where we are. We were at 181. This column here, column G, shows you the change. These would be all the grants that will be reduced next year in some form or fashion. And then these are the expenditures by budget. So you can show we're at 142.9, but that's due to, again, we have grants that rolled over into this fiscal year and will roll over one more time. A lot of our grants will be ending September 30th, and those are all of our ESSER and our ARP ESSER grants. Currently, our expenditures, we're at 75.9, so we're really at 76% of the special funds grant. So we're right on target. And this is just our regular page. It shows you our grant revenue, and this is basically, you'll see that 31%. 31% is basically in the personnel lines, and then the grant funded expenditure again. And you can see where our total expenditures are here, and then the remainder are across the board. And then that's it for this report. And if you have any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, Ms. Hannah and team, thank you very much. I think related to mitigation efforts, I thought you said something was decreasing.
Yeah, that would be our indirect cost rate. And that's the rate that we can get for any federally funded grants.
Yes, before that, I think it was related to final expenses coming in, or.
Oh, yes. We have a lot of outstanding contracts where we're in the last quarter. And a lot of the folks have not submitted their billing yet because it's only June 15th. And, you know, I guess a lot of folks, they sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes it's 10 days. So we're waiting for quite a few final bills for special ed and tuition services and stuff that we have not received as of yet.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Hearing no other comments or questions, sounds like this is still a moving picture. And when would you like to come back and talk to us more about this fiscal year that's ending and where we are with the deficit?
We have to, we will be presenting a final report in September once we close the books. Because you know Munis goes down for a little while, so most likely, I think it's going to be either September or October. I'm not sure what I put on the email last week.
Yeah, you have September 16th as a final
Okay.
budget report. I just didn't
Yes,
know
and
if
I
you wanted to talk to us before then, but so it sounds like September will be the. Okay.
Yes, by September I should have a better number.
Okay.
Or well, really, August 31st we have to close out. So, and then the system goes down, so we won't be using the financial system until it comes back up after the city closes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Hearing no other comments or questions on that. The next thing is the discussion item calendar. So as promised, I'm going to share my screen. If I can find. Are you seeing a discussion item calendar? Great. So just moving forward, this is July through January. This is subject to change, as it says here, based on needs or things that come up, or so this is flexible. If other ideas come up, please let me know, folks. Thanks for everybody who provided comments. Just some things I wanted to highlight that are coming up. At our next meeting, talking about facility use planning, because this is, as we've heard recently, with increased costs around security and cleaning costs for building use, we need to be taking a look at our building use, you know, like allowing others to use our buildings. We're still very committed to doing that, but we should take a look and make sure we understand where that is for this coming year. We should also talk about what's next for the 10-year facilities plan, which is going to feed into budget requests with the city later in the calendar year. Various points in the procurement policy, which I'm hoping we're going to have done coming up here pretty quickly. We have the update on the menstrual products in school restrooms to make sure we're in compliance with the new state regulation or law that's coming in place for September 1. This was an idea for the facilities funding gap. This was something that's similar to the staffing guidelines report, which then leads us to see what's our gap in terms of social workers, language teachers, math teachers, librarians, etc. Is having some conversation around how much we have budgeted to maintain and upgrade our facilities versus what the true need is, so that we can start to paint a picture. I'm not expecting that that we have an answer on that day, but that we'll be discussing what could lead to that answer, so that we're able to, again, be ready for the city's bonding budget schedule, but also as it factors into our next year's fiscal budget. Was just in the citywide building and stewardship committee meeting last week, and one thing that stood out was there's many projects that are on hold because we're trying to figure out the funding in the capital budget. We talked about having an overview of special education, the funding, the contracting, the needs. There's also, Ms. Hannah just mentioned the final budget report for this current fiscal year. The fiscal year that just ended. October 7th starts a new thing for us, which is something we haven't done for a while, because part-time custodial update. So as we said in our last meeting or at the board meeting, I can't remember which, that we would start having quarterly updates on where things are with the custodial, part-time custodial budget. Make sure we don't have any end-of-year surprises. Also having plans for, it was talked about in the memo that there's plans to go out for bid or for RFP or RFQ for the part-time custodial contract. So looking for an update. Then we also every year do a change order report and the legal contract report. And then in the following meeting, having an update on the plans for the facilities management contract, which was also talked about what the plans are for how that's going to go out for RFP or RFQ. November 4, we have an update on the FY 24-25 budget mitigation. This is in preparation because the district needs to notify the board of how things are going at the first full board meeting, which will be immediately after this F&O meeting. So it's a chance to talk about where things are with the budget mitigation and if we're going to have mid-year corrections. And so on. I won't go through the entire thing, but those are some of the highlights, some of the big things that I wanted to just make sure people had seen. Are there any comments or questions related to any of that? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you very much, you and the team. I appreciate the calendar like what's on there. It may be on there already, but transportation is one. And I don't know if that can be a quarterly update, but just seeing where we are in terms of our spend, in terms of performance, how they're doing. And I mean, if it's a bid time, then we need to work on the bid part. But particularly if we're thinking about reducing routes or becoming efficient with the routes, having some update on that and the fiscal implications would be important to me, of the electrification process. The other category is, I think in the past, someone from the city came to share data on our vendors. And I don't quite remember the categorization, and but she did come to present, and I found that to be important to know where we're able to invest.
Thank you for catching that. Yes, on the latter one, that was a report on the vendors used through the woman-owned and minority-owned contractors through the city's program. And we had, I'm trying to remember her name, Liz, would give a report annually. So yes, I left that off. My apologies. And then, so we'll definitely add that on. And then second was for the transportation, a transportation update. We have a multi-year contract for transportation, so they won't be going out for bid, but all the other things certainly sound good. May I ask, through the superintendent, Mr. Carter, just if you could get back to us, when would be a good time for that? I know there's a lot of things going on beginning of the year, but at some point you'll know in, I'm assuming September or October, where the bus routes are and be able to start making projections, since so much depends upon the number of bus routes.
All right, so right now we couldn't make any estimates because we're waiting, right, for all the enrollment to be finalized, for parents to finally, right, commit to the school that the child is going to attend. And then once all that data gets loaded into our system, because I hear that's also quite a complex process as well. From there, then Director Coleman and Teddy Vera will be able to begin to try to look at the different possible routes and the implications. So I imagine that'll probably be something that we can, and you're right, Mr. Wilcox, probably more like late September, that we can share our implications. I think beginning of September, we might be able to give you some preliminaries. Because I know they're going to be working very closely with that during the entire month of August.
So in looking at the calendar, October 21st is a light. There's only 2 items on there. One of which is a financial report. Dr. Yarbrough, do you think that would fit in the time frame? That would do, a lot of these things would be decided by then. It also is, since this is such a big chunk of the budget, having that information would then lead into the November required updates to the board. And so this is a big giant chunk of the budget. So it seems like
Yes.
work would have to be done anyways. Okay. Yes, Dr. Yarbrough? Yeah.
Climate. I know we've seen a couple of presentations, but I don't recall if they came through the finance committee or other committees.
Okay. So I'm gonna look at what we've done in the past, because we did have updates on the F&O related pieces of the climate resolution things. So let me go back and see what that agenda item was previously. And also, and I'll send that to an email to the committee and to the superintendent and Ms. DeMayo and Mr. Carter, just that this was what was done previously, to confirm if that's what we're still talking about. But then I'll have the meeting links, since that happened before Mr. Carter was with us. Yep, more. The floor is yours.
My last one that comes to mind, and there's not a particular urgency around this, but it'd be nice if it could be done this year. That is around contracts with vendors who serve multiple schools, but the contracts come in individually, and whether or not there could be a cost savings or some synergy around the bundling. I think some of it has to do with maybe outdoor learning, maybe fish or hydroponics. I'm not sure, but there are a couple of vendors that we use at multiple schools, and if there's any advantage to the vendor where they might be interested in having a larger contract, as our schools are talking about having good success working with them, that might be something we should pursue or investigate if it would be advantageous to both.
I agree that we go back and forth on that sometimes, is to have larger contracts, one large contract or smaller ones. And I know there's some differences in timelines with schools and grants and when they find out about things, but yes, I remember Common Ground is one of those that's multiple schools we're working with. Ms. DeMayo might recall some others that might be good for us to look at.
Little
Trent.
Scientist. There's a number that we do, Boy Scouts. So we can put that together.
Could we do that for August 19th, maybe? It's more than a month away, and just to see what some of the low-hanging fruit is, and if nothing else, it seems like it'd be useful, because then the information could go out to, because these tend to be school-based projects where individual principals are involved. If for no other reason, to just say, these are the vendors that multiple schools are working with. If you plan on doing that, please report it into central office so that can be explored. That's my thought. I think we've already done some for this year previously, but probably not all of them. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yeah, for our after-school programming through youth and family, I don't know in our current contracts, and also don't know with the budget changes in terms of ESSER dollars going away, how many of these we will award. But linking the custodial cost and building maintenance cost, if those numbers to be factored into the awards that we provide in terms of what we pay. So I think there's some way where we need to account for what is essentially in-kind services for after-school custodial cost or summer custodial costs and building maintenance with the extra programming we provide outside of the school day. I don't know if it's proper to include it in those contracts, but if we can note that expense somewhere, we could kind of keep track of that a cost is being incurred and that we are ultimately paying it.
Well, we do have penciled in for August 5, talking about facility use planning and changes for the year. That's for people using our spaces, and what you're referring to is district use of district spaces, but for the after-school programs. And
Yes.
be factored into that conversation, maybe?
Yes, that's fine. Yeah. Wherever's appropriate, and feel free to tweak the topic to what is appropriate and what is legal. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments on this? Okay. So that's subject to change, and we'll be using that moving forward as the starting point for meeting agendas. Next item on the agenda, 9.3, is procurement policy update. It was part of a productive meeting last week with district folks. We're in subgroups. On the city side, I assume they're meeting. On the school district side, there was a meeting last week going through all the issues of from the school's perspective. I think it was very productive. A lot of stuff came out in terms of wanting to clarify certain things. One thing that came up was for the things that are purely within the Board of Ed's purview, such as selection of curriculum and how that works. Other cities, it sounds like there's some carve-outs in city policies for things in that might be something that's a topic of conversation in this. But things are progressing forward, and as you saw on the discussion calendar draft, I really think we need to come to resolution on this so that we can move it forward. And there was general agreement that getting it done in late July or August was something that was a desire of everybody, it sounded like, on the city side and the district side. So if I'm missing something or mischaracterizing something, please let me know. But progress is occurring. Hearing nothing, then we'll move on to the final thing, is an MOU with the City of New Haven for shared positions. This is just seeing if there's an update. I know that has to be done at some point for this fiscal year. Ms. Hannans?
Yes, I worked with the controller's office, Christy, and she's going to have her budget office prepare the documents and then send it over for my review.
Okay. Things are happening with that. Sounds good. And so I imagine we'll hear about that at maybe the next meeting, depending on process of negotiating that.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Love a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. I'd love a second. I will second it. We will vote. Dr. Yarbrough.
Oh,
Yes.
I seconded. I guess you didn't hear me.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Dr.
It's
Yarbrough,
okay.
Yes.
President Rivera,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So we are adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank you all
everyone.
very much.
Good night.